The baby's lips wouldn't close around her breast, and Beatrice Raines felt her heart breaking with every failed attempt to feed her newborn daughter as the September sun blazed through the window of her small homestead outside Sierra City, California in 1873. Her husband had been dead for 3 months, killed in a mining accident before he even knew she carried their child. And now this precious girl with her tiny red face and weak cries might slip away from her too if she couldn't get milk into her belly. Beatrice had tried everything, repositioning the infant, expressing milk onto her finger to coax the baby's instinct, praying until her voice grew hoarse. But the child just wouldn't latch, wouldn't suckle, and with each passing hour grew weaker and more listless. She paced the rough wooden floor of the cabin her husband Thomas had built with his own hands, cradling the baby against her shoulder, whispering desperate promises into the downy dark hair. The nearest town was 5 miles away, and she had no horse, no wagon, nothing but her own 2 feet and this failing infant who had been born just yesterday after 18 hours of labor that Beatrice had endured alone. Her closest neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, had helped deliver the baby but had left at dawn to tend to her own family, promising to return in a few days. A few days felt like an eternity now. Beatrice was only 22 years old, but she felt ancient with grief and fear. She had married Thomas when she was 19, full of dreams about their life together in California, about the fortune they would make and the family they would raise. Instead, she was a widow with a dying baby and no idea how to save her. The sound of hoofbeats outside made her freeze. Visitors were rare out here, and her first instinct was fear. She moved to the window, still clutching the baby, and saw a rider approaching fast, dust rising behind his horse. As he drew closer, she recognized him as one of the cowboys from the large ranch about 10 miles north, though she had never spoken to him directly. Thomas had mentioned the Quinn ranch a few times, said the owner ran a decent operation and treated his men fairly. The rider pulled up hard in front of her cabin and dismounted in one smooth motion. He was tall and lean, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair visible beneath his hat and a face weathered by sun and wind. He strode toward her door with purpose, and she opened it before he could knock, too desperate for help to worry about propriety. "Madam," he said, pulling off his hat. His eyes were a striking gray blue, and they took in her disheveled appearance and the bundle in her arms with quick assessment. "I was riding fence line when I heard crying yesterday. Been worrying about it all night. Name's Isaac Quinn. Are you all right?" "My baby," Beatrice said, her voice breaking. "She won't nurse. She won't take my breast at all, and I don't know what to do. She's getting weaker." Isaac stepped closer, his expression shifting to alarm. "How long has it been?" "Since yesterday afternoon when she was born. She's tried a few times but just won't latch. I don't understand why." Tears streamed down Beatrice's face now, all her fear and exhaustion spilling out. "I'm going to lose her." "No, you're not," Isaac said firmly. "There's a woman in town, Julia Martinez. She just had a baby 2 weeks ago and has milk to spare. I've heard her talking about it at the general store. I can ride there and bring her back. It will take me a few hours, but I can do it." Hope flared in Beatrice's chest, painful and bright. "You would do that?" "Already planning on it," Isaac said. He put his hat back on and turned toward his horse, then paused and looked back at her. "Keep trying to get any liquid into her you can, even just water on your finger, and keep her warm. Help's coming, hold on." Those words, spoken with such conviction, gave Beatrice strength she didn't know she had left. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and watched as Isaac mounted his horse and took off at a gallop toward town. The dust settled behind him, and she was alone again with her struggling baby, but now she had hope. Beatrice went back inside and tried once more to get the baby to nurse, but the infant just turned her head away weakly. Following Isaac's advice, she dipped her finger in the water bucket and let drops fall onto the baby's lips. The tiny tongue moved slightly, and Beatrice felt a surge of relief. At least she was still responsive. She sat in the rocking chair Thomas had made, the one he had been so proud of, and held her daughter close. "Your father would have loved you so much," she whispered. "He was a good man, strong and kind, and there's help coming now. You just have to hold on a little longer." The baby made a small mewling sound, and Beatrice's heart clenched. She had never felt so helpless in her life. All the challenges she had faced, losing her own parents to cholera when she was 16, making her way west with a wagon train, building a life in this harsh, beautiful country, none of it compared to the terror of watching her child slip away. Time crawled by. Beatrice kept giving the baby drops of water, kept trying to warm her when she felt too cool, kept talking to her and praying and willing her to live. The sun climbed higher, brutal and indifferent, heating the cabin despite the open windows. Beatrice's own body ached from childbirth, but she ignored the pain. Nothing mattered except keeping this baby alive until help arrived. When she finally heard hoofbeats again, the sun was past its zenith, slanting toward afternoon. Beatrice jumped up, still holding the baby, and rushed to the door. Isaac was riding toward her, and behind him on a second horse was a dark-haired woman in a simple dress, holding her own infant. They reached the cabin quickly, and Isaac helped the woman dismount. She was perhaps 25, with warm brown eyes and a capable air about her. "I'm Julia Martinez," she said without preamble. "Let me see the baby." Beatrice brought the infant to her, and Julia examined her quickly, touching her face and lips, checking her color. "She's dehydrated but still strong enough," Julia said. "Let's try her with me." They went inside, and Julia settled into the rocking chair, handing her own nursing baby to Isaac without hesitation. The cowboy looked momentarily startled but took the infant carefully, holding it with surprising gentleness. Julia unlaced her bodice and brought Beatrice's baby to her breast. For a long moment, nothing happened, and Beatrice's heart sank. Then the baby's mouth opened, closed around Julia's nipple, and began to suckle. Beatrice let out a sob of relief so profound it shook her whole body. Julia smiled up at her. "There we go." She just needed someone with an easier flow perhaps, or maybe she needed to be hungrier. Whatever it was, she's feeding now. "Thank you," Beatrice whispered. "Thank you so much." "I'll stay as long as you need," Julia said. "My husband runs the cantina in town, and my mother is watching our other children. I can be here for a few days if necessary. Help get your strength back and see if we can transition her to you." Isaac was still standing there holding Julia's baby, looking relieved. "I should get back to the ranch," he said. "But I can come check on you tomorrow if you'd like, Mrs. Raines." "Please," Beatrice said. "And thank you. You saved her life." Something passed across Isaac's face, an expression she couldn't quite read. "Glad I could help," he said simply. He handed the baby back to Julia and touched his hat brim. "Tomorrow, then." After he left, Julia looked at Beatrice with knowing eyes. "That's a good man," she said. "Rode into town like the devil was chasing him, asking everywhere for someone who could help. Didn't take no for an answer when I said I wasn't sure I could leave my family. Told me a baby was dying and I was the only one who could save her." Beatrice sank into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "I don't even know how to repay him. Or you." "You don't need to repay me," Julia said. "Women help each other out here. That's how we survive. As for him, well, I suspect he'll just be happy to know the baby's all right." Over the next few days, Julia stayed with Beatrice, nursing the baby every few hours while also trying to help Beatrice's own milk come in more fully. They discovered that the baby would nurse from Beatrice if Julia started her off first, and gradually they were able to transition more feedings. Julia was patient and knowledgeable, having nursed 3 children of her own, and Beatrice was grateful beyond words for her presence. Isaac came by every day, bringing supplies from town, checking on them, making sure they had everything they needed. He chopped wood for the stove, fixed a broken step on the porch, brought fresh meat from a deer he had shot. Beatrice found herself looking forward to his visits, to his quiet competence and steady presence. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were thoughtful and kind. On the 4th day, Julia declared that Beatrice was doing well enough on her own. "She's nursing properly now," Julia said with satisfaction. "And you're producing plenty of milk. You'll be fine." "I can't thank you enough," Beatrice said, embracing the other woman. "You saved my daughter's life." "We all need help sometimes," Julia replied. "You come visit me in town when you're able, and if you need anything else, you send word." Isaac arrived that afternoon to take Julia back to Sierra City, and after she had ridden away, he lingered. Beatrice was sitting on the porch, rocking the baby, feeling more peaceful than she had since Thomas died. Isaac leaned against the porch railing, his hat in his hands. "She's looking better," he observed. "Got some color in her cheeks." "Thanks to you," Beatrice said. "I mean it, Mr. Quinn. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along when you did." "Isaac," he said. "Just Isaac. And I'm glad I could help. I know what it's like to lose people you love. Wouldn't wish that on anyone." "You've lost family?" Beatrice asked gently. "My parents and younger sister to fever when I was 18, Isaac said. "That's when I headed west. Couldn't stay in Missouri anymore with all those memories. Been working ranches ever since. Saved up enough to buy some land of my own about a year ago. The Quinn Ranch is mine, actually, though it's not much yet. Just me and 2 hired hands, trying to build something worthwhile." "You're doing well for yourself," Beatrice said. "Your own land at 24, that's an achievement." 25 now, Isaac said with a slight smile. "Had a birthday last month. And yeah, I've worked hard for it. But it's lonely sometimes, building something with no one to share it with." There was something in his tone that made Beatrice's heart skip. She looked down at her baby, at the perfect tiny face, and thought about the future. She couldn't stay out here alone indefinitely. The homestead was too much for one person to manage, and she had a child to think about now. "I imagine it is," she said quietly. "Lonely, I know what that's like too." They were silent for a moment, and then Isaac said, "I should let you rest. But if you need anything at all, you send word to the Quinn Ranch. I'm about 10 miles north. You follow the creek until you see the split oak, then head west." "I'll remember that," Beatrice said. "Thank you, Isaac." He nodded and mounted his horse, but before he rode away, he looked back at her. "What's her name?" "The baby." "I haven't decided yet," Beatrice admitted. "I was too scared to name her. Thought it would hurt worse if I lost her. But now I think I'll call her Hope, because that's what you gave me when I needed it most." Isaac's expression softened. "That's a fine name," he said. "Hope Raines. She's lucky to have you for a mother." Then he rode away, and Beatrice watched him go with a strange ache in her chest that had nothing to do with grief. The next week passed in a blur of feeding schedules and sleepless nights, but Beatrice found a rhythm. Hope was nursing well now, growing stronger every day, and Beatrice's body was healing from the birth. She managed the small vegetable garden, fed the chickens, kept the cabin clean. It was hard work doing it all alone, but she was determined. Isaac came by twice more, bringing supplies and checking on them. The second time, he stayed for dinner, and they talked while Hope slept in her cradle. He told her about his ranch, his plans to expand the herd, his dreams of making it one of the best operations in the area. She told him about her life before Thomas died, about the happiness they had shared, about her fears for the future. "You could sell this place," Isaac suggested carefully. Move into town where there are more people around, more opportunities. Thomas built this cabin with his own hands, Beatrice said. I can't just abandon it. And besides, what would I do in town? I have no skills except farming and keeping house. Those are valuable skills, Isaac said. Any man would be lucky to have a wife who could do those things. Beatrice looked at him sharply, wondering if he meant something specific, but his expression was neutral. I'm not looking to remarry, she said firmly. It's too soon. Thomas has only been gone a few months. I understand, Isaac said. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. I just meant you have options, that's all. But the seed was planted in both their minds. Over the following weeks, as summer turned toward autumn, Isaac's visits became more frequent. He would come by to help with heavy chores, or bring her goods from town, or just to check that she and Hope were doing well. Beatrice began to rely on his presence, to look forward to seeing him ride up. Hope seemed to recognize him too, would stop fussing when he spoke in his low, calm voice. One afternoon in early October, Isaac arrived with lumber in his wagon. Thought I'd fix that lean-to before winter comes, he said. It's about to collapse, and you'll need it for storage. You don't have to do that, Beatrice protested, though she was touched. You've already done so much. I want to, Isaac said simply. Let me help, Beatrice. It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about the way he said it made her breath catch. She nodded, unable to speak, and watched as he unloaded the lumber and got to work. He labored through the afternoon, and Beatrice brought him water and food, Hope bundled against her chest. The baby was 2 months old now, plump and healthy, with bright eyes that took in everything around her. Beatrice felt such overwhelming love for her daughter, such gratitude that she had survived. When Isaac finished the lean-to, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He washed up at the pump, and Beatrice invited him to stay for supper. They ate together at the small table, and afterward, Isaac held Hope while Beatrice cleaned up. The sight of him cradling her daughter with such care made Beatrice's chest tight with emotion. You're good with her, she said softly. I like babies, Isaac said. Always thought I'd have a bunch of my own someday, but that requires finding the right woman first. He looked up at her then, and the expression in his eyes was unmistakable. Beatrice's heart began to pound. She sat down across from him, her hands trembling slightly. Isaac, she said carefully, what are you saying? I think you know, he replied. I've been coming around here for 2 months now, and it's not just because I want to make sure Hope is doing all right. I care about you, Beatrice. I know it's soon. I know you're still grieving your husband, but I can't help how I feel. Beatrice closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Part of her felt guilty, like she was betraying Thomas's memory. But another part, a part she had been trying to ignore, felt drawn to Isaac in a way that scared and exhilarated her. I don't know what to say, she whispered. I do care about you. You've been so kind to us, so helpful. But Thomas has only been gone since June. People will talk if we, I don't care what people say, Isaac interrupted. And I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just telling you how I feel, and asking if maybe, someday you might feel the same way. Beatrice opened her eyes and looked at him, at this good man holding her daughter so gently, and felt something shift inside her. I already do feel the same way, she admitted. That's what frightens me. Seems too fast, too soon. But when you're here, I feel safe. I feel happy. And Hope loves you already. I can tell. Isaac smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Then we'll take it slow, he said. I'll keep coming around, keep helping out, and we'll see where it leads. No pressure, no expectations. Just us, getting to know each other better. I'd like that, Beatrice said. returning his smile. From that night on, their relationship deepened. Isaac came by almost every evening after finishing work at his ranch, would have dinner with them and help Beatrice with chores. He brought his guitar one night and played songs while Beatrice rocked Hope to sleep. They talked about everything, their pasts and their dreams, their fears and hopes. Beatrice found herself falling for him more each day, not just for his kindness but for his humor, his intelligence, his strength. In November, the first frost came, and Isaac insisted on staying over in the barn to make sure Beatrice and Hope were warm enough through the night. In the morning, she invited him in for breakfast, and it felt natural, domestic, like they were already a family. "I want to court you properly," Isaac said over coffee. "I know we've been spending time together, but I want to do this right. Will you let me court you, Beatrice Raines?" Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes," she said. "I'd be honored." The town of Sierra City noticed, of course. When Beatrice went to church with Isaac the following Sunday, Hope in her arms and Isaac at her side, there were whispers and stares. Beatrice held her head high, refusing to feel ashamed. She had done nothing wrong, and neither had Isaac. After the service, Mrs. Henderson approached her with a tight expression. "It's awfully soon to be keeping company with another man," she said primly. "Poor Thomas isn't cold in his grave." Before Beatrice could respond, Isaac stepped forward. "With respect, Madam, Mrs. Raines is a grown woman who can make her own decisions. And if it weren't for the help she received when she needed it most, that baby might not be here. Sometimes good things come out of tragedy." Mrs. Henderson sniffed and walked away, but several other women came up to offer their support. Julia Martinez embraced Beatrice warmly. "Don't listen to the gossips," she said. "You deserve happiness. Both of you do." As winter settled in, Isaac's courtship continued. He brought Beatrice small gifts, wildflowers he found on his rides, a new shawl from the general store, a rattle he carved for Hope. He kissed her for the first time on Christmas Eve, standing under the stars outside her cabin, and Beatrice felt her heart open fully to him. It had been 6 months since Thomas died, and while she would always love her first husband, she knew he would want her to be happy, to give Hope a father and build a new life. In January of 1874, Isaac asked her to marry him. They were sitting by the fire in her cabin, Hope asleep in her cradle, and he got down on one knee and pulled out a simple gold band. "I love you," he said. "I love Hope. I want to build a life with you, raise children together, grow old together. Will you marry me, Beatrice?" "Yes," Beatrice said through happy tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were wed in February, a small ceremony at the church in Sierra City with Julia Martinez and Isaac's ranch hands as witnesses. Beatrice wore her best dress, and Isaac wore a new suit he had bought specially for the occasion. Hope was there too, now 5 months old and babbling happily, passed between well-wishers during the reception. After the wedding, Beatrice and Hope moved to the Quinn Ranch. It was larger than her old homestead, with a proper house and a barn and acres of grazing land. Isaac had built on a nursery for Hope, and there was plenty of room to grow. Beatrice brought her most precious belongings, including the rocking chair Thomas had made, which Isaac set by the fireplace in the main room. "He was part of your life," Isaac said when she thanked him. "Part of what made you who you are. I don't want you to forget him." That generosity of spirit was one of the things Beatrice loved most about Isaac. He never showed jealousy toward Thomas's memory, never made her feel guilty for having loved before. He simply loved her as she was, past and all. Their first year of marriage was happy beyond Beatrice's wildest dreams. Isaac was an attentive husband, hard-working and affectionate. He doted on Hope, teaching her to clap her hands and laugh at his silly faces. The ranch prospered under his careful management, and by summer they had expanded the herd and hired 2 more hands. Beatrice thrived too. She planted a large garden, tended chickens and goats, kept the house beautiful and welcoming. She made friends with the other ranch wives in the area, hosted dinners, went to town for socials. She felt like herself again. Not just a grieving widow, but a living, laughing woman with a future. In the autumn of 1874, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. She told Isaac one evening after putting Hope to bed, and his face lit up with joy. "Another baby," he said wonderingly, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Beatrice asked, needing to hear it. "Happier than I've ever been," Isaac said, pulling her into his arms. "You've given me everything I ever wanted. A wife, a daughter, a family. This is just more blessing on top of blessing." The pregnancy was easier than her first had been, perhaps because she wasn't alone this time. Isaac was solicitous of her health, insisting she rest more and not overwork herself. Hope was walking now, getting into everything, and Isaac would take her outside to play so Beatrice could have peace. In May of 1875, Beatrice gave birth to a son. The labor was long but not as frightening as before, because Isaac was there the whole time, holding her hand, encouraging her. When the baby finally emerged, squalling and red-faced, Isaac cut the cord with steady hands and placed the boy on Beatrice's chest. "He's perfect," Beatrice whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Isaac asked, his own eyes wet. Beatrice looked down at her son, then up at her husband. "Isaac," she said, "I want to name him after you. Isaac Quinn, Jr." Isaac's face crumpled with emotion, and he kissed her forehead. "I love you so much," he said hoarsely. "Both of you. All of you." Hope was fascinated by her baby brother, wanting to touch him and kiss him constantly. At 2 years old, she was talking in full sentences, bright and curious about everything. Beatrice marveled at how different her life was from what she had imagined during those dark days after Thomas died. She had found love again, built a family, created a home full of laughter and warmth. The years passed swiftly. Isaac Jr. grew into a sturdy toddler, then a rambunctious little boy. Hope started school in town, riding in with Isaac when he went for supplies. The ranch continued to grow, becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. Isaac hired more hands, built a larger barn, purchased more land. Beatrice's garden expanded to include an orchard, and she started selling preserves and baked goods in town, earning her own money that she saved carefully. In 1877, Beatrice gave birth to another daughter, whom they named Grace. She was a calm, sweet baby, so different from Hope's spirited infancy. And in 1879, twin boys arrived unexpectedly, doubling their family overnight. They named them Thomas, after Beatrice's first husband, and James, after Isaac's father. Isaac had suggested Thomas's name himself, wanting to honor the man who had loved Beatrice first. The house was chaotic with 5 children, but it was a happy chaos. Beatrice and Isaac worked together seamlessly, managing the ranch and the family with patience and humor. They still found time for each other too, stealing moments alone, taking evening walks after the children were in bed, maintaining the romance that had brought them together. Hope grew into a beautiful young woman, graduating from school with top marks and dreams of becoming a teacher. Isaac Jr. was 14 now, already helping run the ranch, showing his father's same steady competence. Grace was a gentle soul who loved animals and spent hours in the barn with the horses. The twins were 7, still young enough to be adorable but old enough to be helpful. On a warm evening in June of 1884, 11 years after Isaac had ridden for help to save baby Hope, Beatrice and Isaac sat on their porch watching the sunset. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Hope was helping the twins climb a tree while Isaac Jr. and Grace argued good-naturedly about something. "Hard to believe it's been 11 years, Beatrice said, leaning against Isaac's shoulder. "Since that day you came to the cabin." "Best day of my life," Isaac said, kissing the top of her head. "Well, one of them. There have been a lot of best days since then." "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Beatrice asked. "If you hadn't been riding fence line that day, if you hadn't heard Hope crying, if you hadn't cared enough to help." "All the time," Isaac admitted. "But I did hear her, and I did care, and I got to fall in love with the most amazing woman I've ever known. Everything happened exactly as it was meant to." Beatrice tilted her face up to kiss him, still feeling that flutter in her chest she had felt the first time. "I love you," she said, "more than I can ever express." "I love you too," Isaac replied. "And I'm grateful every single day that I get to be your husband, get to be a father to these incredible children." Hope called out to them then, asking if they could have a bonfire. Isaac laughed and stood, pulling Beatrice up with him. "A bonfire it is," he called back. "Everyone gather wood." The children whooped with excitement and scattered to collect kindling and branches. Beatrice and Isaac worked together to build the fire, and soon they were all sitting around it, roasting apples and telling stories. Hope sat with baby Thomas on her lap. Grace leaned against Isaac's side. Isaac Jr. poked the fire with a stick, and James dozed against Beatrice's shoulder. This was what happiness looked like, Beatrice thought. Not the absence of hardship, because they had certainly faced their share of challenges over the years, drought and illness and the normal struggles of running a ranch and raising a family. But the presence of love, strong and enduring, binding them all together. She thought about that terrified young widow she had been, alone with a dying baby and no hope in sight. She thought about the cowboy who had ridden to her rescue, asking nothing in return except to know they were all right. She thought about how tragedy had somehow led to this beautiful life, these precious children, this deep and abiding love. "Mama, tell us the story again," Grace said sleepily. "About when Hope was born and Papa saved her." Beatrice smiled and began the tale they had all heard many times but never tired of hearing. She told them about Hope refusing to nurse, about her terror and desperation, about Isaac riding up like an answer to prayer. She told them about his promise that help was coming, about his determination to save a baby he didn't even know, about Julia Martinez's kindness and the long days of recovery. And then, James piped up, knowing the story by heart. "You and Papa fell in love." "That's right," Isaac said, reaching across the fire to take Beatrice's hand. "I fell in love with your mother's courage and strength, and with Hope's fighting spirit. I knew I wanted to be part of their lives forever. And Mama fell in love with Papa because he was a hero," Hope added with a grin. "I fell in love with your father because he was kind," Beatrice corrected gently. "Because he saw someone in need and helped without hesitation. Because he had a good heart and strong hands and made me laugh when I thought I'd never laugh again." Isaac Jr. looked between his parents with the seriousness of a 14-year-old. "You two are disgusting," he said, but he was smiling, still acting like newlyweds after all this time. "I hope you find someone who makes you feel this way someday," Beatrice told him. "All of you. Love is what makes life worthwhile." They sat by the fire until it burned low, until the younger children were yawning and the stars were bright overhead. Then Isaac carried James inside while Beatrice led Grace, and Hope herded her other brothers. They tucked everyone into bed, said prayers, kissed foreheads. Finally alone in their own room, Beatrice and Isaac undressed and climbed into bed together. Isaac pulled her close, and Beatrice rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Isaac asked. "For saving us," Beatrice said. "For loving us. For giving me this life." Thank you for letting me, Isaac replied. For trusting me, for building this with me. I'm the lucky one, Beatrice. She tilted her head up to kiss him, and he responded with the passion that had never faded between them. They made love slowly, tenderly, celebrating the life they had created together. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they drifted toward sleep. Just before Beatrice slipped under, she heard Hope's voice from the next room, not crying but singing softly to herself. That baby who wouldn't nurse, who had nearly died, was now a vibrant young woman with her whole life ahead of her. And it was all because a cowboy had been riding fence line on the right day, had heard her cries, had cared enough to help. Sometimes miracles came in the form of a man on horseback, promising that help was coming and urging you to hold on. And sometimes those miracles led to love stories that lasted a lifetime. Beatrice fell asleep smiling, grateful beyond measure for every twist of fate that had led her to this moment, this man, this family. The Wild West could be harsh and unforgiving, but it could also be beautiful and full of second chances. She had been given one of those second chances, and she had seized it with both hands, building something precious and lasting. The Quinn Ranch continued to thrive over the following years. By the time Hope turned 21 in 1894, it was the largest and most successful cattle operation in the Sierra City area, employing over a dozen ranch hands and producing some of the finest beef in California. But more than that, it was a home, filled with love and laughter and the kind of deep contentment that came from knowing you were exactly where you were meant to be. Hope married a young teacher from town that year, a kind man named Daniel who shared her passion for education. Isaac Jr. was courting a rancher's daughter from the next county over, and Beatrice suspected a proposal was imminent. Grace was 17 now, still gentle and animal-loving, talking about becoming a veterinarian, which was an unusual ambition for a woman, but one both Beatrice and Isaac supported wholeheartedly. The twins were 12, growing like weeds, already taller than their mother and showing every sign of inheriting their father's height and build. Beatrice was 43 years old, her dark hair now streaked with silver, her face lined from sun and laughter. She looked in the mirror sometimes and saw a woman who had lived, really lived, through tragedy and triumph alike. She had loved 2 good men, borne 6 children, built a life she was proud of. She had no regrets. Isaac was 46, still strong and capable, though he moved a bit slower these days and let Isaac Jr. handle more of the heavy ranch work. His hair was gray at the temples, his face weathered, but his eyes were still that striking gray-blue, and they still looked at Beatrice like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. On their 20th wedding anniversary in February of 1894, Isaac surprised her with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children in Hope's capable care, now that she and Daniel were living on the ranch in their own cottage, and took the train west. Beatrice had never been to a city before, and she was overwhelmed by the noise and crowds and tall buildings. But Isaac held her hand through it all, showed her the sights, took her to fancy restaurants and the theater. On their last night, walking along the waterfront with the sunset painting the bay in gold and purple, Isaac stopped and turned to her. "I need to tell you something," he said. Beatrice's heart skipped. "What is it?" "That day I rode to your cabin 21 years ago, I told myself I was just being a good neighbor," Isaac said. "But the truth is, I had seen you before in town with Thomas, and I had thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever laid eyes on. I never would have said anything, never would have done anything about it because you were married to a good man. But when I heard that baby crying, when I rode over and saw you standing there with Hope in your arms, looking so desperate and frightened and brave, I fell in love right then and there." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "You never told me that. I didn't want you to think I had ulterior motives," Isaac said. "I wanted you to know I helped because it was the right thing to do, not because I was hoping to win your affection." But now, 20 years later, I can admit the truth. I loved you from the first moment I really saw you, and I've loved you every moment since. I don't know what I did to deserve you, Beatrice said, her voice breaking. You survived, Isaac said simply. You kept going when it would have been easier to give up. You let yourself love again when you could have closed your heart. You built this beautiful family with me, raised these incredible children, been my partner in every way that matters. If anyone's lucky here, it's me. They kissed there on the waterfront, two middle-aged people still as in love as they had been at the beginning, maybe more so because they had weathered so much together. When they finally pulled apart, Beatrice wiped her eyes and laughed. We're causing a scene, she said, noticing the amused looks from passers-by. I don't care, Isaac said, echoing the words he had spoken so long ago when she worried about what people would think. Let them look. I'm kissing my wife, and I'm not ashamed of it. They returned to the ranch renewed, ready to face whatever came next. And what came were more years of happiness, of watching their children grow and start families of their own. Hope had 3 children, Isaac Jr. had 4. Grace eventually did become a veterinarian after studying with a doctor in Sacramento, the first woman in the area to achieve such a thing. The twins both became ranch managers, one staying on the Quinn Ranch and one starting his own spread nearby. By 1905, Beatrice and Isaac were grandparents 12 times over, their house constantly full of visiting children and grandchildren. Beatrice was 54 now, Isaac 57, and they had started talking about slowing down, maybe traveling more, seeing parts of the country they had never visited. But then, in the spring of that year, Hope came to them with news. I'm pregnant again, she said, her expression complicated. I'm 32, this wasn't planned, and Daniel and I thought we were done having children. But there's something else. I've been having trouble, similar to what you described with me. I'm worried the baby won't be able to nurse when it comes. Beatrice took her daughter's hands. Then we'll handle it the same way we did before, she said firmly. We'll find help. There are more resources now than there were back then. You're going to be fine, and so is the baby. When Hope went into labor in August, Beatrice was there, and so was Isaac. The baby, a boy, was born healthy but refused to nurse, just as Hope herself had done. But this time they were prepared. There was a doctor in Sierra City now who had studied the problem, and he showed Hope how to use a special feeding apparatus until the baby learned to latch properly. Within a week, the crisis was resolved, and Hope's son was nursing normally. History doesn't always repeat, Isaac observed, holding his new grandson. Sometimes we learn from the past and do better. But sometimes, Beatrice said, thinking back to that terrifying day when Hope was born, history gives us exactly what we need. If she hadn't refused to nurse, you never would have ridden for help. We never would have fallen in love. All of this, our whole life together, came from that moment. Isaac looked at her with that expression she loved, the one that said he saw her, really saw her, and cherished what he saw. Best thing that ever happened to me, he said, even if it was terrifying at the time. They grew old together, Beatrice and Isaac, watching the new century unfold, seeing automobiles and electric lights come to Sierra City, watching their grandchildren grow and have children of their own. The ranch passed to Isaac Jr. when they were too old to manage it anymore, but they stayed in the house, surrounded by family, living out their days in the place they had built together. On a sunny afternoon in June of 1915, 42 years after Isaac had first ridden to Beatrice's cabin, they sat together on the porch as they had done countless times before. Beatrice was 64, Isaac 67, both of them showing their age but still strong in spirit. The house was full that day. All their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered for a summer reunion. Do you remember what you said to me that day? Beatrice asked, watching the little ones play in the yard. When you rode away to get help? Help's coming, hold on. Isaac quoted immediately. I've never forgotten it. You kept that promise, Beatrice said softly. Not just that day, but every day since. You've been my help, my strength, my partner. You asked me to hold on, and you gave me something worth holding on for. We gave each other that, Isaac corrected. You saved me just as much as I saved you. I was so lonely before I met you, just going through the motions of living. You gave me purpose, gave me love, gave me a reason to build something lasting. They sat in companionable silence, hands clasped, watching their legacy play out before them. Hope was there with her 4 children and 7 grandchildren, a matriarch in her own right now. Isaac Jr. had taken the ranch to even greater heights, his own children already showing aptitude for the work. Grace had broken barriers and paved the way for other women in veterinary medicine. The twins had built successful lives, raised good families, contributed to their community. All of it, every bit of it, had started with a baby who wouldn't nurse, a desperate mother, and a cowboy who heard cries for help and refused to ignore them. That single act of compassion had rippled outward, creating waves that touched dozens of lives, generations of lives. As the sun set over the California hills, painting everything in shades of amber and rose, Beatrice rested her head on Isaac's shoulder and felt complete. She had lived a full life, rich with love and meaning. She had known sorrow but had found joy on the other side of it. She had been given a second chance and had seized it with both hands, building something beautiful and lasting. I love you, she whispered to Isaac. I love you too, he replied. Always have, always will. They stayed there until the stars came out, until their children called them in for dinner, until it was time to rejoin the celebration of family and life and love. And as they walked inside together, still hand in hand after all these years, Beatrice Raines knew that her story, their story, was exactly what a love story should be. Full of challenges overcome, sacrifices made, and love that endured through everything life could throw at it. The baby who wouldn't nurse had grown into a woman who passed down the story of her rescue to her own children and grandchildren, teaching them that help could come from unexpected places, that love could bloom in the aftermath of tragedy, that holding on was worth it when you had something precious to hold on for. And the cowboy who rode for help had become a man who spent his life being exactly that. Help, hope, and home for the woman he loved and the family they built together. In the Wild West of 1870s California, amid the harsh beauty and constant challenges of frontier life, 2 people had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had created something that would outlast them both. A legacy of love, a testament to the power of compassion, and a reminder that sometimes the best things in life came from the worst moments, if you were brave enough to hold on and let help arrive. Their story became legend in Sierra City, passed down through generations as an example of what love could be, what families could build, what second chances could offer. And long after Beatrice and Isaac were gone, long after the Wild West had been tamed and civilized, people still told the story of the baby who wouldn't nurse, the cowboy who rode for help, and the love that bloomed from a moment of desperate need. Because that's what the best love stories were. Not fairy tales without conflict, but real accounts of real people choosing each other, again and again, through all the challenges life presented. Beatrice and Isaac had done exactly that, from that first terrifying day to their last peaceful years, and their love had created ripples that spread far beyond what they could have ever imagined. And somewhere, in the vast tapestry of human connection and resilience, their story remained woven into the fabric of what made life meaningful. The willingness to help, the courage to love again, and the determination to hold on when holding on seemed impossible. Those were the things that mattered, the things that lasted, the things that turned tragedy into triumph and despair into hope. Beatrice and Isaac Quinn had understood that truth, had lived it every day of their lives together, and had passed it down to everyone they touched. That was their legacy, greater than land or wealth or fame. They had loved well, lived fully, and shown that sometimes help came on horseback, promising that if you could just hold on a little longer, everything would turn out exactly as it should.